everyone if we are actually live. Okay. So, hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our SASA Ask an Expert Q&A. As usual, I'm Lauren. I'm just going to introduce SASA really quick, and then we can just jump into the Q&A, which today's Q&A, the topic is something from nothing, creation stories from around the world. I'm pretty sure I might have it slightly wrong. But anyways, to just talk about SASA really quick, SASA is Save Ancient Studies in America. It's an NGO focusing on reversing the downward trend in mostly undergraduates taking ancient studies programs and getting ancient studies degrees. So go to saveancientstudies.org, check out our website. It's a new website that a team of summer interns just created, and it's awesome. Go to the events page and RSVP to our October events. We have another monthly book club and 2 more live Ask an Experts during October, which you can start RSVPing to anytime. So other than that, I think I'm just going to hand things right over to Tuhin to start getting things introduced for this Ask an Expert Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Lauren. Very happy to be here at another SASA event. I am Tuhin. I'm Tuhin Bhattacharjee. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Comparative Literature at New York University. I work on ancient Greek and ancient Sanskrit literature and philosophy, and also on feminist theory, deconstruction, and psychoanalysis. Very happy to be here, and I have been involved with SASA recently, and I think they're doing some wonderful work, especially given that ancient studies right now in the US especially, and I think all over the world, is kind of a diminishing discipline. There are no funds, and especially in the neoliberal university, ancient studies is not considered something that's important, something that is fruitful, something that is productive. So SASA's mission is really to attract students, especially young students and scholars across the world, to study the ancient world. And I'm extremely glad to be a part of this initiative. All right, I think that's all I had to say about myself. We have 2 other wonderful panelists with us today. One is Dr. Alessandra Indelicato, who is currently a postdoc scholar in the University of Milano-Bicocca. She is also a very wonderful friend of mine. She is from Milan in Italy, and she'll be speaking later on, and she can also talk a bit about herself and her research. She's also the author of a monograph on Dionysus, and I've been asking her to translate it into English so that I can read, or else I'll have to learn Italian in order to read it, which is not a bad idea. Also, we have here with us Soumyajit Sen, again, a very, very dear friend, assistant professor here at Cooch, Behar, Panchanan, Barma University in West Bengal, assistant professor in Sanskrit, brilliant scholar on Sanskrit literature, and he has also edited and several books, and his writings have appeared in several collections. So as you see, we have a wonderful group of people here about to talk about ancient studies. Today's theme is, of course, on ancient cosmogonies or ancient creation myths, particularly in ancient Sanskrit and Greek literature. So I will spend a few minutes talking. I mean, this is primarily a Q&A panel, so it's not like we are giving lectures here. We will just spend a few minutes, like 10 minutes or so, each of us, introducing the topic, and then soon after, we will be opening the floor to the audience for them to ask questions about the topic specifically, or about ancient studies in general. All right, so today I will focus briefly on a few hymns from the Rigveda, which is the oldest known Vedic Sanskrit text, composed sometime around the early 1st millennium BCE. or late 2nd millennium BCE. So in this constellation of myths in the Rigveda, the creation of the universe is often depicted as a material bodily phenomenon. So existence arises out of non-existence through the sacrifice, through a primordial sacrifice of this original undifferentiated body, which is called the Purusha. In fact, I can show you a picture too. Just give me a second. This is just like obviously an approximation, not like a real picture. We don't find this picture in the Vedas, of course. Can you see this? Okay. Yeah. So, just imagine this as this. This is obviously an approximation, and this is meant to be both literal and figurative. So, out of this sacrifice of Purusha, this primordial undifferentiated body, and Purusha represents the cosmic masculine principle or consciousness behind creation. For instance, in the Purusha Sukta hymn in the Rigveda, the different parts of Purusha's body are sacrificed. And out of this cosmic dismembering, the material universe is born. And the Purusha Sukta hymn is also kind of a notorious hymn because it talks about how the different castes are born out of the body of the Purusha. And so the head of the Purusha becomes the Brahmin caste, and the legs become the feet, in fact, which will serve the rest of the body, become the lower castes, Shudras. So, of course, this is in so many ways a problematic and not for passage, though many scholars argue that it is probably the Purusha Sukta, at least these verses are probably a later addition to the text, because at the time of the Rigveda, the caste system as we understand it today did not really exist. It had very different contours. Okay, but for now, I want to draw our attention to a different question. And the question is, what happens to the female body or the maternal body in these creation stories? Because we know that most forms of human and animal life come out of the maternal womb. The mother is the source of creation, the source of life. Where is the maternal body in these ancient cosmogonic myths? Because remember, Purusha is the cosmic consciousness, but it represents the masculine principle. So what about the woman? And Soumyajit will later, I think, talk a little bit about Prakriti, which Soumyajit will talk in detail about this perhaps, but it's often translated as nature, but it's so much more. It is again like a cosmic principle of creation, sometimes like the counterpart of Purusha, feminine counterpart, the feminine principle of creation. But in the Rigveda, we do not hear so much really about Prakriti. It's primarily later development, and especially in Sankhya philosophy, it becomes very crucial. So I want to talk about a few hymns in the Rigveda, and hymn 10.72 is considered one of the most difficult hymns there in the Rigveda, and it's a cosmogonic myth that tells of the parthenogenetic birth of earth and sky, which means that it tells us that how the first woman creates the universe out of herself, alone, without the help of a male consort. And these are the lines. Do you see my, Alessandra, do you see the PowerPoint? Okay, cool. These are like just a couple of verses from that hymn.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. These are just the first couple of lines. I think these are lines 3 and 4 of that hymn. It says, in the first generation of the gods, what exists was born from what does not exist. The regions of space were born following that which exists. So space was born, the space, and even we see in some other myths, time, the concept of time was born from that which exists. But what is it that exists before everything else existed? That which exists was born from the one whose feet were opened up. And the Sanskrit word here is Uttanipad, which literally means the one whose feet were opened up. Again, the next verse says, the earth was born from the one whose feet were opened up. From the earth, the regions of space were born. So again, the source of what exists is here described as Uttanipad, that the one whose feet were opened up, which evokes the common image of birth from the maternal body, from the mother, from the body of the mother, from the womb of the mother, from the vagina of the mother, right? And now the very next sentence in this verse, which I do not have here, it says, from Aditi, Daksha was born, and from Daksha, Aditi. Now this primordial mother here seems to be associated with the goddess Aditi, who is throughout the Rigveda one of the prime symbols of the feminine principle in Vedic and Upanishadic thought. And Aditi is said to have given birth to Daksha, the male principle. So the line is, from Aditi, Daksha was born. So from this female principle, the masculine principle was born. And then it says, and from Daksha, Aditi was born. This is extremely interesting because this might seem baffling to us, but this doubling of origins, that from Aditi, Daksha was born, and from Daksha, Aditi was born, reflects the paradoxical, the incestuous, and the chiasmatic structure of creation, which is that you cannot really talk about inside and outside, before and after, clockwise and anti-clockwise, when you're talking about the moment of creation, because this is a moment which technically does not exist inside creation, right? It is something before creation, but you cannot really say before creation, because the very concept of before presupposes an idea of time. But when there is no creation, there is no time, there is no space. So how really can you talk about this time? And the idea of causality, that something comes from the other. There is A, and from A there is B. This idea presupposes temporality, causality, time. And so when you do not have time, you cannot have causality. So, and I think this verse reflects that, this chiasmatic nature of creation so wonderfully when it says, from Aditi, Daksha was born, and from Daksha, Aditi was born. And the next poem I wanted to look at is another hymn, enigmatic hymn. It's 1.185 in the Rigveda, which takes the form of an impassioned prayer to earth and heaven. It prays to the earth and heaven, and the refrain of the poem is, protect us from the formless abyss. This is the poem. I'll not read out the entire hymn, but you can see that one of the refrains here, and this actually keeps repeating, this is only a section of the poem that I have like just copied and pasted here. O heaven and earth, protect us from the formless void. Again, O heaven and earth, protect us from the formless void. And this hymn talks about the creation of the earth and heaven, and how earth and heaven give birth to the sun in their between. It is the sun which kind of keeps the earth and heaven and earth kind of separate, and keeps them from falling into each other and dissolving. And there is this fear that if they dissolve, everything will be darkness. So the poem seems to express the Vedic fear of the darkness, of the lack of definition, which is characteristic of pre-creation chaos. So, there is this absolute chaos, darkness, lack of individuation, lack of definition, lack of form before creation. And that is the fear that this poem seems to express. O heaven and earth, protect us from the formless void. And one of the words that used here, I think, is abhavam, means the non-created, the fear of the uncreated. Okay. So again, the anxiety is that in the absence of heaven and earth and the sun, which gives definition, creation will dissolve into the primordial body of Aditi Uttanipad. Again, the primordial mother, the one whose feet were opened up. So in fact, in psychoanalytic parlance, we can read this as the anxiety over returning into the abyss of the maternal body. And as many of you would know in classical psychoanalysis, the mother remains the origin of life, but individuation and the entry into culture requires that the child be separated from the mother and be initiated into paternal law, into the law of the father, right? And this ensures that the Oedipus complex will be resolved and the child will not end up killing the father and sleeping with the mother. Now, I'm definitely not suggesting that we read these myths in light of a Western psychoanalytic lens in any unproblematized way. But what we learn when we look at psychoanalytic theory as well as these myths is that we should be wary and critical of celebrating myths which posit the woman as some kind of origin, as a feminist text, right? So what we see in the Rigveda is that even though Aditi Uttanipad is posited as an origin in some of the hymns, not only is there an anxiety over going back and dissolving into the quagmire of the creative movement, but also that the mother is posited as an origin only to be then somehow overcome or erased or appropriated. So the line that I read, from Aditi Daksha Vaskruja and from Daksha Aditi, we can read it in another way as well. That while at first we learn that Aditi is the origin of existence, the maternal is the origin of existence, we are immediately told that it is Daksha who created Aditi, thereby kind of snatching away the woman's reproductive powers for the man, right? And this becomes even more prominent in a myth that I will end my introduction with. This is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is considered to be the oldest of the Upanishads. And the first chapter there describes the beginning of life when the original body, the first primal body, which we can also call the Purusha, was the only being to exist. So he was the only thing that existed. He looked around and he did not see anyone. So he desired another. And out of this desire, he split himself. The Sanskrit word is pat. He split himself into two. And thus, from this split, you have pati and patni, which are also like the Sanskrit the Hindi words, male and female, husband and wife. Here again, we see the idea of the woman being born out of the man instead of the other way around. And this is also very similar to the book of Genesis in the Jewish Torah and the Christian Old Testament. The first woman, Eve, is born out of the first man, Adam's rib, again inverting the natural order of reproduction. The reason I brought up psychoanalysis is that these myths had a profound impact in the inception of psychoanalytic theory. In fact, Freud refers to this particular myth from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in his major work, Beyond the Pleasure Principle. So Freud is here talking about the death drive and our unconscious desire to go back to an originary, undifferentiated state of things. And so he talks about Plato's Symposium, where Aristophanes tells us the story of how we humans were two bodies in the beginning. So, this is how we looked. We were two bodies in the beginning. With 4 hands, 4 legs, 4 eyes, and so on. And then we were split into two by Zeus because we had become too powerful and arrogant. And it is since then that we have been searching for our lost other half. And that is the origin of desire. So while elaborating on this myth, Freud cites the above passage from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in a footnote. And while commenting on the possible influence of Indian ideas on Plato, this is what he writes. And I will end with Freud's quote here. So Freud writes, I should like to point out that essentially the same theory already occurs in the Upanishads. For in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where the emergence of the world from the Atman, the self or ego, is described, we read, and then he quotes this passage from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and says, this is the oldest of all Upanishads, etc., etc. As to the question whether Plato could possibly have drawn on these Indian ideas, Yeah. As to the question whether Plato could possibly have drawn on these Indian ideas, even if only indirectly, contrary to current opinion, I should not want to dismiss the idea completely. Given that in the case of the metempsychosis theory is the theory of the transmigration of souls, or the Punarjanma theory. In the case of the metempsychosis theory too, such a possibility cannot really be disputed. If there were indeed such a link, mediated in the first instance by the Pythagoreans, it would scarcely detract from the significance of the congruity of ideas, since if any such story had somehow percolated through to Plato from the Oriental tradition, he would not have made it his own, let alone give it such a prominent role, if it had not seemed to him replete with truth. Now, whether Plato was influenced by the Hindu tradition or not, we don't know. I don't want to comment on that. But I think it's interesting to think that, again, Freud, when he's talking about this tradition, he was so much influenced by the Hindu tradition as well. Thank you. That's all I had to say for the introduction. And so I am supposed to moderate this as well. So I will just pass the mic to Alessandra. And Alessandra will speak, I think, primarily on ancient Greek creation stories, primarily on Hesiod. And yeah, so over to you, Alessandra.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to everyone to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It came from Tuhin, who is a very good friend of mine. I have to confess that I'm very excited to be here because I think that Sasa is a very interesting group in the sense that it's very important nowadays not to flatten the symbolic sense of myth and mythology. Is very important, to spread the knowledge that the ancient has and still has nowadays. So Tuhin, with his presentation, gave us a very interesting and landscape and fascinating, I would say, landscape on the Indian myth. And of course, it resonates a lot, as I think that some of you already noticed. It resonates with all the Greek mythology. So just to begin, I would like to, maybe this can sound very banal, but I would like to say something about the etymology of the word mythology. We know that mythology is a composed word, and I'm saying that because I know that probably not a lot of you are expert or a researcher of classics. So I'm trying to keep things very easy, but you can tell me whenever you want, you can interrupt me. Let's start with a very banal thing, that is the etymology of the word mythology. We know that mythology means it's composed with a mythos and logos. What do we want to say? That mythology is, the mythos is a story, is a telling. So it means that there has been something that has been passed through times with traditions, and it goes, let's say, to shape the culture and the psychological and collective process of building of a society, for example. Logi came from logos, and this is a very hard work in Greek, because logos means word, means speech. But what we know, and Soumya probably later can confirm better than me, it comes from a Sanskrit root. There is a Sanskrit root of leg, that means connection. So the leg means also like literally to pick something. So when we say mythology as all the composed word with the logos, we know that we want to connect something. What is that we want to connect? The logos, the word, actually connect the thing, the ontology, let's say the being of the thing, with the let's say, a representation of the thing itself. So, for example, the same noun of the thing that connects the reality of the thing with the representation of the thing that we have. So now we can ask why and how mythology has to deal with the origin. And for example, what the origin say, what does the origin say about the human nature in general? So this is very interesting in my opinion, because we have a lot of myths about origins. We can ask why the human being has always felt the need to speak about the origin. And of course, these are very complicated and complex topics, but we are going to just deepen very briefly here. And what I can suggest is to think of the image of the tree. So when we think of the tree, we think of something that has roots and take nourishment. The tree takes nourishment from the roots. So the thing is that, as Jung, for example, said, one of the best images to represent the human nature is the tree itself. So we can think that, of course, we need the environment, right? We need also other things, not just the roots. But the roots are very important. So the human being is always turned toward the past, let's say, in the sense that we are what we have been and what our roots say of ourselves. And the whole life of a human being sometimes is trying to recognize the roots and trying to hardly, because it's very efforting as a word to take the distance and to recognize the roots in order to become let's say, an individual, not fragmented, right, in the etymology. So I'm saying to you all these things because what I would like to, we are going to speak very soon of Hesiod now, but what I would like you to know is that the word in Greek to say origin is very complex, and there are not just one word. Especially here, I would like to deepen with you two words that in Greek means, in ancient Greek means origin. One is arche, and the other is genos. Arche, for example, from archaeology, we are uncomfortable with this word, and the arche is the origin related to the punctual, to the punctiform, to the, let's say, almost quite stable and fixed concept of origin. Whereas instead, the genos is the origin related to the family. In fact, we have the genealogic tree, again, for example, the tree. The genos is the origin spread, is the origin, let's say, branched, if this is an English word, is a more fluid origin. And why this is important? Because when Hesiod wrote the Theogony, he actually wants to write a genos, a genealogy of the gods and of the gods and goddesses. So this is important because we already know that the mythic, the narrative, the traditional structure of Hesiod Theogony calls us to think or to rethink, if we want, of the word genos, of the fluidity and continuity of the origin. In this sense, the first question of Hesiod is, what is the origin before Zeus, before the traditional the Olympian gods? And posing this question in the 18th, 7th, 8th century before Christ is very problematic and very risky. Why? First of all, because we know that cosmogonic myth, let's say, belongs to a context, a religious context. So we are speaking of Hesiod Theogony inside the context of the ancient Greek religion, right? And we know that religion is influenced, or is itself an historical process. Is historical, is a cultural product, and religion is never singular. We can think of religion in a plural way, and we have to think about that. And why this is risky? Because this means, so if religions are always plural, This means that we don't have just one genus, we don't have just one arche, and that the truth itself in the singular does not exist. And also, I would also add that the point is that probably we should also thematize that Hesiod is just one of the attempt to witness a certain experience of the origin. This is also important because this is not just unique, and yes, this is very particular and beautiful, but it's just one, right? Joseph Campbell would say that everyone has his own mythology, as his own attempt to speak about his origin, let's say, not just in the religious way, but I would say also in the spiritual way, that is like in the psychical way. And plus, I think that we should consider that in the ancient Greek culture, religion was related to very practical rituals and shared in the collective instance. So this is for you, for the audience. Probably we should also ask, what is today, what is nowadays, what do we do nowadays with the collective instance, if we share or not a certain kind of sacred, if we share or not a certain attempt of understanding a collective way to deal with origins, or if instead the symbolic meaning has been flattened from by capitalism, for example, by consumerism, for example, and so on. Also because, as we know, after the death of God with Nietzsche, after the Protestantism, after the very birth of the psychoanalysis, we would say, the collective instance has been kind of reduced to a sort of isolation of the individuals, right? So this is a question. I can't deepen this question now, but the question is, what is the real cosmogonic myth nowadays? What kind of collective instance do we have now? So just to speak about Hesiod instead, the attempt, the witness of Hesiod is to order. And this is very interesting, referring to what Tuhin just said. Why? Well, let's take the word. The ancient Greek word for ordering is kosmeo. And kosmeo means to order something, to organize something, to put something in the right order, in order this thing to be beautiful, in order this thing to express its own light. In fact, in the ancient Greek culture, the ethic and the aesthetic level, they go together. We know it with the Kagalokatia, for example. So it's also very interesting because if we think of the thing we just said about the nowadays topic, the nowadays question, we have flattened the word kosmeo, the word of the order, of the, let's say, fulfillment of the individual psyche, with the cosmetic. For example, for us nowadays, kosmeo is just being beautiful with the makeup, for example, for women or whatever, right? So this is very interesting because in ancient Greek, instead, the verb kosmeo is something much, much deeper and related to the internal structure that is ordinated, is ordered, and therefore is beautiful. So the attempt of Hesiod is an attempt of ordering histories, stories, and tellings that were already circulating in his culture, right? So he didn't create something ex novo, as we say, but he wanted to put order in something that was already there. We are going to just briefly say something of the first of 5 lines of the Theogony, and I apologize for it because I didn't prepare any slide for you guys. I'm very sorry for it, but these are the verses from 116 to 122. So in these 5 lines, Hesiod basically gave a telling of the beginning. So he asked for the muses to be influenced, and he starts saying that at the beginning there was chaos. Then I would say, because I don't think we have a lot of time, but then he will say there are in order Gaia, the hearth, the feminine principle of the hearth. Tartarus, there is the deep and dark element, and Eros. The interesting thing here is that, again, and this disconnects with what Tuhin said, chaos here is the chasma, is the verb is casco in Greek. It means the wide open mouth, is a dark vortex. Again, why it is interesting? Because chaos is something that we can think it's chaotic, right? It's messy, we don't understand it. But it's very interesting that chaos is not itself disordered. The chaos has a principle of order inside of it, but we are not able to see it. We are not able to comprehend it. And so we need to order it in order for us to be comprehensible. But this is important to understand. Sometimes probably chaos wouldn't need the intervention of another movement of ordering, for example. This is important to understand, as Tuhin was saying, that the first element is always a combination of things, but this doesn't mean that it's itself messy, it's itself disordered. It is disorder for us. And this is important. Why? Because when we encounter someone, when we meet someone, the other than me is always chaotic at the beginning. Chaotic doesn't mean just a source of anguish because it's unknown, but it also means something that can create awe and wonder, right? And this is exactly what philosophy is about. So at the beginning, there is this melting pot of combinations of things. There are, from our perspectives, they are contradictory. And then it arrives, Gaia, the hearth, the principle, the maternal principle, the receptacle, Plato would say, that has something related to the highest level, the highest level of the creation, the highest level of order of elements. Whereas on the other side, we have Tartarus, there is instead the underworld, the very, very deep and dark level of elements of the world. So we can see here, this is interesting, that inside of chaos, we have contradictions. We have the highest and the lowest. And so we need, and this is Hesiod, and so we need Eros. Eros is the love, is the connective strength, is the connective force that can create harmony on things. This is interesting because I'm trying to think of the plurality of origins and of cosmogonic myth, but this is actually what happened in the polis, in the collectivist stance, as well as in the psyche. We know that the unitive principle, love, is the principle of harmony between contradiction or between different elements, and this is also what happens in the act, in the most beautiful act of love, there is the sexual conjunction. So we can also ask, for example, why Hesiod wanted this and not another order? Or, for example, what is the real nature of this genos for Hesiod? What I would like to say, just because I'm very late and I'm sorry, I apologize for it, but I'm going to close it, to close my speech now. What I would just like to raise is the sensitivity. Hesiod's sensitivity is about something that is tragic. I would say tragic in the most literal way to understand it. There is the sacrifice, what Tuhin said at the beginning, this ritual of sacrifice a god, tragos aidos. So the song for the sacrifice of a god. That means that tragic is something that is related to give order, let's say, give order to life in a way that we can feel participating to something that is higher and deeper at the same time. And this brings to spiritual growth. So I would like to close with this thing. The tragic sensitivity of Hesiod is related to ourself, and researching on cosmogonic myth in general asks to ourselves, for example, where are you? Where are you now? Where are you going? What are your roots? For example, are we able to speak of our roots? Or again, the artistic domain. Hesiod asked to the muses to be influenced. So it means that when we want to speak about roots, we can't really logically, rationally speak about them, right? We need to explore other kind of intelligence, other kind of, let's say, other than logic registers of knowledge. So for example, the intuition, for example, in Plato's Timaeus, right? The world is created with music, again, ordered with an other than logic speech or work. Also, another thing that I would like to say, and I close with this, is that when we want to speak about roots, I mean, the researcher who search in this field, in my opinion, is very much personally, spiritually involved in these matters. These matters has the power to and the strength to attract change in the researcher, and they can never be done alone. They always require the relation. They always require the support. For example, Hesiod wouldn't have written the Theogony if he couldn't ask for the muses to be influenced. So the necessity, let's say, of the other. Okay, so I'm very, very, very much apologize for my late, and I think I'm gonna Tuhin. I think I'm gonna pass the speech to Soumya, right?
Yes, Soumyajit. Yes, thank you, Alessandra. I think thank you for this very, I think, very nuanced and philological reading of Hesiod. I feel like I need to talk to you so much more about some of the things you said, and maybe I have a few questions as well after Soumyajit speaks. So thank you so much. And yeah, okay, over to Soumyajit now. Hopefully we will be able to see you. Soumyajit's internet for some reason is really playing truant today because there was a storm and his mobile data is really bad. But I hope there wouldn't be major issues. But if there is a lag, Soumyajit, you can just turn your video off, and you have sent me your PowerPoint presentation. You can just speak, and I can like share.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So, am I audible, Tuhin?
Right now, yes.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I thank my friend Tuhin for the invitation to share my view at SASA, which is a very good platform, I think so, for reviewing studies of the world. So let me to speak on the creation myths of ancient India before such an august gathering. Today is a very special day, since it is the 200th birth anniversary of the legendary social reformer of India, Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, and he was also a very great Sanskrit scholar. May he bless me, and as I began to speak on the Puranic myths that shed light on the story of the origin of this universe. So this is Soumyajit. I'm now working as an assistant professor in the Department of Sanskrit of Cooch, Panchanan, Barma University, West Bengal, India, and Department of Sanskrit of Java. Hello?
Soumyajit, yeah, could you turn your video off?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, but could you turn your video off? Because I think, yeah, just turn your video off and just speak.
Okay, okay, now is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just, yeah.
Okay. So, I'm also pursuing my PhD from the Department of Sanskrit of Jadavpur University, and I am right now working on the Sanskrit Christian literature, and specifically on the Sanskrit kavyas or poems authored by Professor John Muir, a Scottish Orientalist. And these kavyas are on Christianity and very specific on or Saint Paul. To all of you for the bad internet connection, and also for as you know, my little talk might bore you a bit, as the theory of the ancient Indian cosmogony is a little bit technical as well as a little bit long. Okay, so please forgive me for that. Are based on the Vedas. So inherited, there are several developments in the Vedic literature. Different theories of creation of the universe are found. The philosophical theory of Vedic cosmogony has its origin in the Nasadiya Sukta of the Rigveda. In this hymn, the origin of the world is traced to Tad Ekam. Tad means that, and Ekam means one. So Tad Ekam means that one, which is different from both being, that is Sat, and non-being, that is Asat. In the Purusha Sukta, however, we find another account of creation. In it, Purusha, as Tuhin said, is conceived as the cause that has transformed himself into the world. And the Upanishads also further elaborate this idea and declare that Sat or Brahman is the ultimate cause of the world. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad describes this cause as Atman or self. The Aitareya Upanishad also states that Atman produced the universe. I am not going to go into the detail as of the theory of Vedic cosmogony, as my friend Tuhin has already spoken about it. Thus, I will restrict myself on the theory of cosmogony as stated in the Hindu Puranas, and more specifically in the Vishnu Purana. Tuhin, am I audible? Everything is okay?
Sometimes you're breaking off, but I think by and large we can hear you. Yeah, it's fine. You can go on. I mean, for most stretches you're fine, and then there are moments when your voice is breaking up. But that's fine. Go on. I'll let you know if it's too bad. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. So now the Vishnu Purana.
Yeah, could you talk a little slowly? Maybe that will.
Okay. Lauren told me. Okay. So the Vishnu Purana, which conforms the most to the traditional definition of the Purana, deals with the theory of creation at the very beginning. Okay, the cosmogony that is found in book 1 of the Vishnu Purana is divided into 4 linked creation stories. The first one is about the evolution of Vishnu in terms of Pradhana or Prakriti. The second myth is that of Vishnu as Varaha or the boar, who dives into the waters for Prithvi or earth. The third one is of creation through meditation or austerity. The last one describes the creation through the churning of the ocean. The Purana links these together as orders to the creation. So now the world according to the Vishnu Purana is a creation of Vishnu. He is the cause of the creation, maintenance and destruction of the universe. The Vishnu Purana says that Vishnu has created the world, that he exists in himself, and at the time of dissolution will go back to himself. According to the Vishnu Purana, by assuming three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, these are three gunas in ancient Hindu mythology, Vishnu created this world. Vishnu himself has assumed the forms of Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara, and has become the creator, preserver and destroyer of the world. The first manifestation of Brahman or Vishnu is Purusha. The other manifestations come later. Those are Vyakta. Vyakta means the manifest, and Avyakta, the unmanifest, and Kala, the time. These forms have come from Vishnu and are a result of his playful activities. Thus, in the beginning, there were only four categories, and namely, those categories are Purusha, Avyakta, Vyakta, and Kala. Okay, so Purusha, the manifest, the unmanifest, and the Kala, that means time. Now, at the time of creation, what happens? So, at the time of creation, Lord Vishnu enters by his will into Prakriti. Okay, and Purusha, and produces agitation in the mutable. Mutable means pradhana, and immutable Purusha principles. So, when the Lord enters into them, his proximity alone is sufficient to produce the disturbance that leads to creation. Just as fragrance affects the mind due to its proximity and does not actually modify, thus becomes the agitator. But he is also the agitated, that is in Sanskrit Shobhya. He is present in the essence of matter, both when it is contracted, that means in Sanskrit it is Sankocha, means the samya or equilibrium of the three gunas. Okay, whereas by previous agitation, modification of Prakriti is more. Hello. So the first modification of Prakriti is.
Soumyajit, speak a little slowly. I think we can hear you better if you speak a little
slowly. Okay. So now let me talk about the evolutes of Prakriti. So the first modification of Prakriti is Mahat or intellect. You can see the graph also, the chart also, Prakriti, yes, and is Mahat or intellect, in which the unequal development of the gunas takes place. As Mahat is the creation of Prakriti, which is Triguna, Mahat is threefold, namely Sattvika, Rajasika and Tamasika. Pradhana then covers the Mahat Tattva. Pradhana means the Prakriti. Okay, Mahat Tattva. Just as the skin covers a seed. From the threefold Mahat, the threefold Ahankara, namely Vaikarika or Sattvika, Taijasa or Rajasika, and Bhutadi or Tamasika are produced. Ahankara, being Triguna, is the cause of Bhuta, that is elements, Indriya, sense organs, and the Devata, gods. Just as Pradhana covers Mahat, Mahat covers Ahankara. Then Bhutadi or Tamasika Ahankara, being productive as Shabda Tanmatra, rudiment of sound, produces Akasha or ether. The quality of Akasha is Shabda. The Bhutadi then covers Shabda Tanmatra and Akasha. When Akasha or becomes productive, it produces sparsha tanmatra. Ether and the rudiment of sound then envelop and the sparsha tanmatra. So in this way, the Vishnu Purana describes the investment of each element by its own rudiment, and of each rudiment by its preceding gross and rudimental elements. Vayu, becoming productive, produced Rupa Tanmatra, from which Jyoti or gross light or fire, I can say, produced color or Rupa, which is the attribute of light. And then, as in the case of previous elements, the Sparsha and the Vayu covered up the Rupa Tanmatra. Being thus conditioned, the differentiated produced Rasa Tanmatra was produced. In a similar manner, the Rasa Tanmatra and water being covered up by Rupa Tanmatra produced Gandha Tanmatra, whence earth originated. Rasa, that is taste, and Gandha, that is smell, are the properties of water and earth respectively. In this way, the bhutas or elements and tanmatras are the productions of tamasika ahankara. The tanmatras literally means its own measure and are the potential conditions of quality. In each element resides its peculiar rudiment, that is the subtle form. The rudiments are the characteristics, properties of the elements, like tamasika ahankara, taijasa ahankara also produce 10 cognitive or conative organs. The 5 cognitive organs are skin, eye, nose, tongue, and ear. The 5 conative organs are the organs of execration and procreation, the hands, the feet, and the speech. From Vaikarika or Sattvika Ahankara, 10 presiding deities of these sense organs, and 11th Indriya, that is the mind, was produced. Now, in a very short way, let me speak on the theory of cosmic egg. Okay, so what is the cosmic egg? Ether, air, light, water, and earth are endowed with the properties of sound, touch, color, taste, and smell. They possess various powers and are different from each other. However, without their combination, they could not create living beings. Thus, having combined with each another, they assumed the character of the mass of the entire unity. Then, with the support of the Purusha and with the accusations of Pradhana, Mahat, and the rest up to the Mahabhutas, an egg was formed. This egg gradually expanded from within like a water bubble. It was compounded of the elements and began resting on the waters. Vishnu, by assuming the form of Brahma, resided in the egg. The womb of this egg was composed of the mountain Meru, while other mountains were the uterus, and the oceans were the waters that filled its cavity. In those egg continents, the seas, the mountains, the planets, the whole universe consisting of the 3 lokas were produced. This Brahmanda or the universe resembles a coconut that has various shell coverings, since it is encircled on the outer side by water, fire, air, ether, and the bhutadi, each of which is 10 times larger than the earlier. Next, there is Mahat, and finally the Avyakta or Pradhana. In this way, the Brahmanda has these 7 coverings. Lord Vishnu, assuming the form of Brahma and affecting Rajoguna, becomes engaged in creation. He himself maintains the world in the form of Vishnu with Sattvaguna as a suitable time, at a suitable time, by causing preponderance of the tamas, the Lord swallows up the universe in his form of Rudra. In this way, the process of creation goes on. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is the theory of creation according to the Vishnu Purana. Now, I apologize for my connectivity to all of you. Now, over to you, Tuhin.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I think ultimately we could hear you perfectly, especially in the second half. So it was not really a problem. I think this was great, and this was actually a lot. I feel like I will ask you later to send me whatever whatever the sources you were drawing on, because it seems to be such an amazing, such a fascinating world.
I was just gonna say, not to pop back in really quick, you guys. Hi. If you guys have, I know that you guys like had some materials and stuff that you were screen sharing and whatever. If you can email that to me, I can try to figure out a way to like post it somewhere, maybe like on the resources page of the SASA website or something like that. The resources page has a bunch of stuff from our other YouTube videos for like ancient fan fiction and things like that. So I think we can post it there too, like information from these like Ask an Expert sessions, so that people can read more about what you were talking about. So if you can like take your time to email me stuff that you guys used for this, I think that would be awesome. And then I can link it in the comments of these videos, and like on the places where the recordings will be, I'll link it to like the resources page so people can get the stuff to read more about it. Other than that, people who are watching, like, please send in any questions or comments about like what you think they're talking about, basically questions about it and everything, questions about their work, what they do, anything like that, basically. Yeah.
You can also like seek clarifications, like if there are things that you feel like you didn't understand very well and you want us to elaborate on it, just feel free to ask and we'll try our best to clarify.
Yes, and also I would like to add that for the audience that there is no stupid questions, like no question is stupid, never. So just don't be afraid. I mean, I think we are completely available to answer to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the audience can totally ask us, and Lauren, you can send us the questions. But I think I had a couple of questions for you guys. It was great listening to you. So, Alessandra, firstly, I think I was really fascinated by how you were connecting myths to our notions of identity, collective identity and individual identities. And so, but today we are living in times when the idea of collectivism is not the kind of collectivism that you seem to be talking about, right? I mean, today we are living in a collectivism that has become dangerous, as it tends to be based not on respecting the other and respecting difference, but instead on this fantasy of a pure positivist origin, right? So how do you think, and this is not like a question just for you, but really a question for all of us, I mean, how do we think about ancient myths in a way that can prevent us from becoming isolated individuals, while at the same time also neutralizing this fantasy of a pure identity, be it ethnic, racial, or religious?
So thank you.
Any thoughts to share on that?
Very, very interesting for me, because this is actually one of my best interests in mine and one of my group's interests. So, I mean, the problem of how the ancient is related to the contemporaneity, because of course we study the ancient, but it doesn't mean that we are in our tower, as we say in Italian. I don't know if it's also English. I'm sorry for my English sometimes. So, but Tuhin, this is very interesting because you are totally right when you say that the kind of collective in the ancient Greek culture is basically felt or understood in a different way. I would say, I mean, this is a very complicated topic, of course, but briefly, I would answer saying that one of the thing that we probably have lost, and I don't know if we can recuperate it or not, is the possibility for the collective instance to give a rhythm in the daily life. I mean, celebrations, feasts, rituals, this is actually not disappeared. I don't want to be extremist, you know, in any sense. If you take some reality of the south of Italy, for example, we have a lot of rituals, but also in the north. I mean, we have a lot of rituals that literally give a rhythm to the daily life. And we see this thing also in Hesiod, Works and Day, where the sacred literally gives a rhythm for the daily life in general. But I think what we lost is with Mircea Eliade would say, the perception of the sacred, the perception that sacred is something immanent, it's something that we live every day. The problem is that in order to perceive the sacred, I think we should be able to rest, to breathe, for example, to live breathing. There is a thing we don't do no more. We are completely taken in an accumulation, in the accumulation of experience, in the accumulation of interpretation, for example, about symbols, on symbols. I mean, what is a symbol today? Nobody knows, right? And I'm not saying that, I mean, what I'm saying is that we tend to flatten the reality today, whereas the sacred gives a sort of echo, gives a sort of openness to the daily life, to the reality that is very clear in the daily life, in the practice. And this is the reason why Claudia Baracchi, my tutor, and my colleagues, we study on philosophical practices. That is how to bring philosophy today, how to restart breathing, for example, or developing a certain kind of awareness that the God money, because today the God is just the money. We identified the origin, let's say, if we want, on the possibility to accumulate or to change in an indifferent way, regardless of the quality, for example, regardless of the thickness of the experience or of the objects we have around us. But also, if you think of the body, you were speaking of the body at the beginning, for example, and it struck me a lot because, but let's think about the perception of today of the body. Like, I came in America like 9 months for this visiting, and I was struck by the complete difference between among cultures. I mean, we live in a world today where the body is sometimes just have to be performative. It's not as Marco Aurelius would say, an acropolis to deal, an acropolis to inhabit. But I don't want to be too much talkative, but this is very interesting in terms of consumerism, in terms of capitalism, accumulation, how we perceive the sacred today.
Well, thank you. I think that's great, and that's very that's making me think about a lot of things. Perhaps we can talk about it even outside of this session, because I totally see your emphasis on the need for the sacred, because that's something the neoliberal world seems to disavow. But at the same time, capitalism is just so clever, so intelligent, that I think this also has started appropriating the sacred. So we have various these festivals and so on being appropriated by capital. So I mean, and the other danger is also that, like, say, for example, in a country like India, we have the sacred becoming the prerogative of religious fundamentalists, and I think this is true for not just in India, so many other places, of some kind of fundamentalists and extremists. having monopoly over the sacred. So yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. Like these are such complicated questions, but I think uh, what you said about origins is so interesting because there is this claim about the purity of origins, but when we go back to origins, we see how origins are never simple or pure or one. Origin is never unitary, right? There's always so much going on in there, and that I think is so political as well, in the way it allows us to think of ourselves like all identities as impure, as contaminated.
Yeah, I think that in a sense, the origin, I mean, we know that it exists. This is the interesting thing of the origin. We know that it exists. It exists because we are here, but we can't remember it, right? We have no memory about our origin. We can have some memories about, for example, the first years of life where our memory develops, but we don't have the memory of our birth, for example. And so this thing that works for the individual psyche, it works also somehow for the collectivity, I would say, in the sense that again, the importance of the memory, the importance of telling stories, who are the people who can actually give us the perception that we had an origin. I don't know, like I think our parents or family that tell or told us how we are born. I don't know, me and my nephew, I always like to every birthday of my nephew, I retell to him the story of his birth. I mean, these are important things that I think they literally build the perception of sacred. You know, this is the thing. These build the possibility to grow spiritually.
Yeah, the sacred is open and not as something closed, which I think is yeah, the danger. But yeah, thank you so much, Alessandra. Yeah, may have like a couple of more questions for you, but um, Shomuji, they wanted to ask you something, and that was like, yeah, I think everything you said was fascinating, and it was a lot. But you focused primarily on the Vishnu Purana, right? And I was wondering if I mean, no, actually, you did talk about some other. You talked about the Hiranyagarbha myth as well. But yeah, in the time we have, if you could also speak about any of the other Puranas, because I know that there are several Puranas that each have their own way of glorifying their own god and visiting that particular god as the origin of the universe. So if there's just anything you would like to add to the other texts.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there are plenty of Puranas, as you know. So let me put off the video first. Okay.
Yeah, you seem to be. It seems to be fine, right?
Yeah.
Actually, you can turn on the video.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if there's a problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So the thing is, the antiquity of this mythologism can be found within India's own tradition. Okay. So let us return first to the Shatapatha Brahmana of Rigveda. Okay. So it's a very old treatises of Hindu mythology or Vedic mythology, I can say. So here we read like this. Verily in the beginning, the universe was water, nothing but a sea of water. The water desired, how can we be reproduced? They toiled and performed forbid devotions. When they were becoming heated, a golden egg was produced. The year indeed was not then in existence. This golden egg floated about for as long as the space of a year. In a year's time, a man, that is Prajapati, was produced therefrom. He broke open this golden egg. There was then indeed no resting place, only this golden egg. At the end of a year, he tried to speak. He said, Bhu. Okay, Bhu. This word became this earth, Bhuvaha. This became the air, Swa. This became yonder sky. Okay, the Prajapati, according to this text, that is Shatapatha Brahmana, then continues to create through self-impregnation. And there we find another text, Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 3, 19. Okay, here we can find in the Chandogya Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad has a variation upon the same theme. It began in this world was non-existent, and it was existent also. It developed, it turned into an egg, that is andam, egg andam in Sanskrit. It lay for the period of a year. It was split apart. One of the parts of the eggshell became silver. Okay, and the other one gold. That which was silver is this earth. That which was gold is the sky. What was the outer membranes is the mountains. What was the inner membranes is cloud and mist. What were the veins are the rivers. And what was fluid within is the ocean. And in another Rigvedic text, that is Hiranyagarbha Sukta, also in that Sukta or hymn, we find in the beginning, he, that means Prajapati, became a golden embryo, the famous Hiranyagarbha. Okay, when born, he alone was the Lord of creation. He established the earth and the sky. When the mighty waters came, conceiving all as the embryo, then arose out of it the one spirit of life of the gods. And like this way, the creation myth was in the Sanskrit text of the Vedic period. And for reference, I believe one by Hans Estrius, volume 5, number 2, in the year 1966. The title of the paper article was Cosmogony as Myths in the Vishnu Purana, and another by very famous R.F. Gombrich. He was the former lecturer in Sanskrit and Pali in the University of Oxford, and the title of that paper was Ancient Indian Cosmology. Two very, very famous articles in this particular genre or particular area. Enthusiasts can take a look on this, on two articles specifically, and there are other articles too. So like this way, in the other Puranas also, in the Padma Purana or in the other Puranas also, we can find this kind of things, this kind of same story, creation myths, like as I told in the Vishnu Purana. Okay, so like this. So thank you.
Tuhin, if it's possible, I would like to thank Soumya because I followed with extreme interest. And I also would like to say something about the comments, because I think at the beginning we had a very clever and smart participant, Danilo Costa, who wrote that your speech actually, Tuhin, reminded him the Hesiod theogony. So I hope that Danilo was satisfied enough, speaking of the Hesiod theogony, but probably he would like to add something, or he would like to deepen something else. But in any case, Danilo, I'm thinking of you, and I hope you have been satisfied. The second comments I really appreciated about androgyny is from Svarup Ray, and he basically was looking forward to listening something about the myth of androgyny. And I'm sorry, but this called me immediately into the myth of Dionysus. So I don't know if we want to speak about him, because I spent 7 years of my life studying him, but the point is that thank you very much, Svarup Ray, because
yes, totally go for it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but very brief.
Who else can speak about Dionysus?
Well, it's just yeah, this is actually a thing that to which I'm very passionate. So, but I just would like to say a little thing, actually. There is first of all, Tuhin, you already spoke about the myth of the androgynous in the symposium. The first thing I really would like to encourage the audience to think about is that when we speak of androgynous, at least in the way I researched on it, is separated from the sexes. So when we speak of the androgynous, we are not speaking of the conpresence of the two sexes, let's say the vagina and the penis, but we are speaking of the masculine and the feminine principle. The both of these elements are in one psyche. The psyche is, as we know, embodied, and the body has a sex. That can be a penis or a vagina, but this doesn't have anything to share with the genre. So this is the first very interesting and important thing to say to everyone who is not very, let's say, into the topic of the androgyny in general. But why Dionysus is interesting? Well, Dionysus is a very, very complicated and complex god, is a pre-Olympian. So I'm not going to deepen it too much, but I would like to say this thing instead, that I don't know if you understood that in all our three species, there are some, as we say, red threads, that like the fil rouge that takes us together, is the attempt to go beyond the dualistic thinking, is the attempt to integrate a sort of speech, a philosophical speech on the origins that can give a landscape of what could be the experience of the whole. So Dionysus is exactly this thing. Dionysus is the attempt to, how to say, to put all these perception of the whole in just one god. So for this reason, Dionysus is everything and the contrary of everything all together. So for example, he's puer, he's a baby, but he's represented as a senex, as an old man. He's again feminine, but he's also masculine. He's an animal, for example, but he's also human. Is basically half god for his birth, for his own genealogy. So what I just would like to say is that when we speak of Dionysus, we are speaking, as Tuhin was saying at the beginning, of a myth of dismembering. But if we think about the dismembering in a symbolical way, we can actually see how much the fragmentation influence and, you know, occur nowadays. You know, there is a massive run to psychotherapists and to psychopharmaceutics, right? Why? We feel that there is something that miss, like our psyche is very frequently fragmented in this sense. So I just would like to invite you to think of mythology in a contemporary way and in a symbolic way. So we can just try to interpret, trying to do the work of hermeneutics. But about androgyny, what is interesting is the relation with nowadays. We know, for example, if we saw the last fashion trends about a sort of feminine that tends to the masculine, let's say, and the masculine, for example, I don't know, the trousers, I mean, the pants. There is a thing that in Italy, for example, was not very far, was strange for women to not to wear skirts, for example. But I'm speaking of the beginning of the 19th centuries, of course. So, but again, for example, the masculine are, you know, very caring of the body. The beauty for the man, let's say, nowadays is developing. So we are seeing that in the society there is this tension toward the androgyny. And this is a question for you, I mean, for every one of you. What does it mean? I studied this thing with the students in the University of Illinois Rhine when I did the visiting. We studied the way and the shapes and the forms in which androgyny tend to represent itself nowadays. My opinion is that there is an attempt to go toward an experience of the whole. There is what the ancient called Zoe, the word, the life intended not as the segment of the bios, not as the segment of the life, the individual life, but as the eternity, the life without beginning and end. So I don't want to be too much talkative, Tuhin, but I don't know if Soumya or you have something more to add about it.
No, thank you. In fact, what both of you said in many ways reminds me of myths in other parts of the world, not just Greek and Hindu myths. So you were talking about androgyny, when I was talking about the importance of the two in creation. Right, that creation is always double. And Soumyajit also talked about the waters, the creative waters, right? At the beginning, there were waters. And this is such a common motive across ancient myths, I think. Because, of course, in the Bible, we have the myth of the Noah's Ark and so on. But even the story of the Genesis seems to be influenced by various Near Eastern mythology. For example, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which has one of the major characters, Utnapishtim. And Gilgamesh meets this guy Utnapishtim, who says that there was this massive flood sent by the god, and he survived it. And then there was this kind of second creation, out of which everything was born. But also, I'm thinking of the ancient Babylonian epic called the Enuma Elish, where it tells us the story that before creation there were these two primordial entities, Apsu, which is the masculine principle, which is fresh water, and Tiamat, or salt water, who is the feminine principle. And these were the only two things that existed. And from these two waters, the fresh water and the salt water, from their union, the other gods were born. And now these gods raised an uproar, like they were extremely noisy. And so Apsu, the freshwater masculine god, decided to destroy them. And these gods heard about their plan and sent their leader, Marduk, to kill Apsu. And after Apsu's murder, Tiamat, the original feminine principle, she planned revenge. And she, she transformed herself into this monster and sent forth like a legion of monsters. And after a long and ferocious fight, she too was killed by Marduk. But the interesting part is this, and that is again because of my own interest, this fascinates me. What do you do with the corpse of the primordial mother? You create the universe out of it. So that is precisely what Marduk does. He divides Tiamat's body into two, and from the upper body he creates the heavens, like and from the lower body he creates the lower part, he creates the earth, and so on. So literally the cosmic creation is made of the corpse of the murdered body of the mother. And scholars argue that this story is what influenced in many ways this one, and also the one Gilgamesh influenced the story of Genesis in the Jewish Torah and the Christian Old Testament, where actually you see, God creating there are these waters, God separates the waters and so on. We're almost like enacting or repeating what Marduk did, except that there is no mention of the body here, of the murdered maternal body here. It's totally erased. So yeah, I just thought that was something interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is very interesting. Yeah. And Apsu, Apsu, it is, I think the word is Sanskrit word. Okay. Up means Jalam. jalam or water. Apsu, it's in Saptami Vibhakti. Okay, it's in the water. It means in the water.
Interesting. Yeah, I
So,
mean, so
yeah,
many these ancient languages were so connected, and we have
yeah,
the Proto-Indo-European uh, family. So just like so many Greek and Sanskrit words are also connected. Yeah.
yeah. So we think we
Okay, it
are
seems like we have
running
a
out of time.
no. It seems like we have a question.
Yeah, there's a
So
question here, very interesting.
one or two. Many ancient myths talk about autochthonous births of one parent reproducing without the help of the other. This narcissistic fantasy seems to be all but realized in our post-human times. Recent breakthroughs in genetics, for example, propagate the fantasy of a single parent birth. How do you see these fantasies connecting the ancient world with our times? Okay.
Well, thank you, Agnimar. This is very interesting. And actually, I am not sure of how to reply, but I'm thinking of Athena, who is born from the head of Zeus. And I always found this myth, I always found this birth actually incomplete, I would say, in the sense that, but this is my perception, of course, I'm speaking for myself. Yeah, I mean, of course, Athena is, we know that she's the goddess of wisdom, she's the goddess of knowledge, right? And she's a Parthenos, she's a virgin, and she lacks, we would say, in the accomplishments of seductiveness, of femininity, of that sense of playing, let's say, with the feminine body, because she's actually very masculine. She's born from the head, from the brain of Zeus, and actually she is, in fact, the goddess of the rationality, right? But I mean, if we think of Dionysus, I'm sorry for, if we think of Dionysus is the twice born. He's born from Semele. Semele has been burned by Zeus, and then Dionysus is sewn in the tide of Zeus. And so there is a sort of autochthonous birth again, but it's doubled. So I don't know what actually I think about this thing this time, but I definitely think that this kind of birth produce a sort of lack in, or fragmentation, or sense of deprivation in. So I mean, the conjunction, the Jung would say the conjunctio oppositorum, the conjunction of the opposite, is a fundamental part, is a fundamental dynamic of the birth. And when it doesn't happen, or it happens basically, but I think also in nature, I mean, I'm not a biologist, but I think there are something similar also in nature. When it happens, it means something. This is the part. What does it mean? I'm not sure, but and we can speak about it. But I think it's very, yeah. I don't know. I think it's very complicated. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's great that you mentioned Athena myth, because again, to bring in my agenda and my research here, Athena is like a motherless goddess in a way, and she's born out of Zeus's head. But that's not actually true. I mean, she does have a mother, right? She has a mother, but then she's killed by Zeus. She's eaten by Zeus, right? Because Zeus is told that that the child would kill him, and so she eats the mother up, and that is why Athena gestates within Zeus's body and comes out of his head. So, but in ancient representations, in artistic representations, we see Athena coming out of Zeus's head, and in Aeschylus's play, in the Orestean trilogy, for instance, Athena says clearly that a woman is not, she is herself a woman, but she says that a woman is not required for a child to be born. A mother is totally unnecessary. Just look at me. And she says, look at me, I am the example. I was born without the help of a mother. I was born entirely out of my father's, I'm totally my father's creation. But this is not true. it's not that she did not have a mother, but the fact that her mother was murdered, her mother's identity was erased, in order to create this myth of the father's autochthonous creation. And same in Dionysus too, in a way, like the mother is murdered, and then it's like the birth from her womb is kind of appropriated, and it's put in her thighs, in Zeus's thighs, and the Dionysus comes out of it. And this is very interesting because like Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and again, as you say, this very uptight goddess, coming out of Zeus's head, while Dionysus, who is the goddess of wine, the goddess of madness, not God, the god of wine, the god of madness, coming out of Zeus's thighs, which is like a more a sexual bodily part. And I wonder what that too might have to do with all of this.
Yeah, thank you for the precision that I didn't remember actually about Athena, but yeah. And also it's totally true that there is a sort of starting point of violence in a sense.
There's a forgetting. And I think what you said, like you didn't remember, I think this is like, like we don't really hear this in myth. There is a kind of forgetting of that origin, of Athena's origin. And like a different origin is kind of put out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. Interesting story. For me also, I am totally a newcomer in this field. So it's a very interesting story, I must say.
Yeah, but also I think I don't know if I really answer this question about genetics and post-humanism. I mean, what recently has been bothering me is that, and thanks to Ognivo, in fact, has been talking to me about this, is that so on the one hand, there is this fantasy of masculine autochthonous birth, so that the man can produce alone without the help of the woman. In fact, in Euripides' play Hippolytus, the guy says, "Oh, if only we could do away with women. Women just are a curse on the earth." But it's such a women are such a like a necessary curse, because we need them to reproduce. If only we could reproduce by ourselves. So there is this fantasy of men trying to being able to create alone without the help of the woman. And recent breakthrough in different kinds of genetics or eugenics and so on tell us that maybe in the future it might be possible. We don't know. So there is this fantasy of being able to create by oneself. At the same time, there is also the fear about the same thing, because think about how clones, our attitude to clones, right? Where our attitude to AI or robots, for instance, where precisely because they are not born out of natural, quote unquote, natural birth, they're not born out of a man and woman coming together. We have so much anxiety towards that. We are not at all okay with that kind of birth, with cloning, for instance, where cloning is simply you're a copy of your genes, and if you really think about it logically, it's not really anything different. Just like we are born by the copy of our parents' genes, cloning happens in a similar way, and yet there is so much we feel so much threatened by it. And I find it really interesting that on the one hand, we do fantasize about being able to create by ourselves. And the other hand, when the possibility is actually there through cloning or through genetics, we are also afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would go on for, I think, hours. I don't know if I can, though. I have to ask Lauren. I think we are out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe another time.
Yeah, we could do literally a whole nother like ask an expert specifically on that. Let me know when you want to schedule it, I guess. But yeah, no, literally I wrote in the comments that we're like in the Matrix. That's, you guys, this is the world now.
I mean, like, who are we? Like, is this real or is this unreal? Like, we're talking to each other, and yeah, like what is more real, what counts as more real, and what counts as less real. All those very fundamental ideas about embodiment and about the self are kind of thrown into disarray by various post-human developments.
of course, I have like a loud truck in the background of my house right now. But anyways, so I don't know. Do you guys have any last thoughts or comments / any like certain plugs you want to do for yourselves, your own research, this kind of thing, and then we can pretty much wrap it up. Like I said, I think I will get links from you guys to stuff that they were talking about during this session and post it on the resources page of the SASA website. So look out for that in the next few days. And then yeah, thank you guys so much. This was so interesting. Like some of these cultures I know more about than the other ones. And I think all of you here like have the same thing. So it's really interesting listening to or like learning about the different things and how they connect and just how interesting the stories are in and of themselves.
Thank you. And I would just tell to everyone watching, join SASA. I think it's an amazing word. Join our reading groups and the ways events that they organize, and take up ancient studies. I think it's a fascinating world.
Yes, yes.
And it just I think an understanding of who we are and where do we come from. It enriches us, and like a perspective of history is so important to understand what's going on today and contemporary politics. And I think being open to the past allows us to be open to the other, open to what is not I. And yeah, that's just so.
I was also very grateful for this. I had a lot of fun. So thank you, Tuhin, for this invitation. And thank you, Lauren, for all the organization about it. And I just would like to add to people maybe who were ashamed or didn't feel to comment or something, that we are always open for any comments you want to give this session or questions that probably the metabolism will give you tomorrow morning after having slept on these things, because sometimes, the digestion about these thoughts is longer. So, I mean, we are here in any case.
Yeah, feel free. The recordings will be up on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. So, if people have comments for things, as you said, in a few days or whatever, and if you guys feel like looking at them, feel free to chat with people in the comments on these videos. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, everyone who's watching too, in the audience too. Yeah, I don't know if there's much. Just the one thing about Tuhin was saying about reading groups, we're hoping to do mini reading groups over January too, and then we have full, like, longer 6 or 8 week long reading groups over the summer. All of these lovely people did reading groups or came to reading groups. And thank you guys all for supporting SASA and stuff. Go and become a member to the audience. Go and become a member of SASA. You'll get newsletters that have everything with the live events and stuff, information to RSVP to them in it. Yeah, to have more events like this and more people. If you are a PhD student or working in any kind of ancient studies fields, you can contact us to be an expert in these kind of events. We also do archeo gaming and monthly book clubs, and like we said, reading groups, and just a lot of stuff. Go to the projects page of SASA, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Anything else? Anyone else want to close out anything?
No, just thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tuhin. Also, I would like to thank Tuhin very. He invited me, and I am very new in this platform, and SASA is doing a really great job. And for the I think I have attended
last 3, I think. Yeah, last 2 or 3 sessions.
3 classrooms. Yes, and this is one also. And I think with me there are many people, many Sanskrit scholars also, who study in this ancient studies of Indian ancient study, who is in this platform or in this study. So they would also like to join SASA, and I would also recommend them to join SASA also. and it's a great fun to chat with Tuhin and Alessandra. And
we have a
and
WhatsApp
Lauren.
chat group
It's a,
where we have been talking.
yes, yes,
Like for this.
absolutely.
Uh,
And it's a very wide range of that the area of today's topic is very wide, and so within I mean, this will go on and on and on, and if you could do that, but time is short, I think. So it's okay. Thank you once again, Lauren and Sage and Alessandra and Tuhin specifically. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. I mean,
And thank you,
the pleasure is
Sasa.
entirely mine.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And thank you to all our viewers. I'm going to cut off the live stream now. Have a wonderful day, everyone.